Explosions echoed over an Iranian city in what sources described as an Israeli attack. But Tehran played down the incident and indicated it had no plans for retaliation, a response that appeared gauged towards averting region-wide war. The limited scale of the attack and Iran's muted response both appeared to signal a successful effort by diplomats who have been working around the clock to avert an all-out war since an Iranian drone and missile attack on Israel last Saturday. Iranian media and officials described a small number of explosions, which they said resulted from Iran's air defenses hitting 3 drones over the city of Isfahan. Notably, they referred to the incident as an attack by infiltrators rather than by Israel, obviating the need for retaliation. And the Iranian official says there were no plans to respond against Israel for the incident. Here in Africa, some of Togo's opposition parties and civil society groups have renewed their calls for widespread popular protest a day after lawmakers approved constitutional changes likely to extend the 19-year rule of President Faure Gnassingbé. In a statement, the Dynamique pour la Majorité du Peuple Opposition Coalition and the Opposition Coalition and other signatories said the changes relating to presidential term limits and how presidents were elected is a political maneuver to allow Gnassingbé to extend his tenure for life. What happened at the National Assembly yesterday is a coup d'etat, they said, noting that the text had not been made public and reiterating calls for the population to mobilize against the changes. Ambassador Joe Keshi is a retired Nigerian diplomat who served at various foreign missions, including the country's consulate in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was consul general. He now joins me to appraise the tense situation between Israel and Iran, as well as the likely impact of those exchanges on the wider Middle East, not forgetting the situation in Togo. Good to have you on this Day Live This Sunday talk show, Ambassador Keshi. Thank you for joining us. Well, Ambassador, is the tension easing off?
Happy Sunday, Ruben. Yes, in a way, yes. I think it's not going away, but it's easing off now that as we say in the local Nigerian parlance, do me, I do you, God no go vex. They have each retaliated against one attack or the other, and I think the Israelis yielded to global pressure, to be rational, to be strategic, if they must respond. And they did that. But in doing that also, I think both sides have sent, clearly defined messages, and I believe that they have also learned a lot from what has happened. For example, the Iranians should be aware by now that the Israelis can penetrate their airspace anytime they decide to, and that they actually know where their nuclear facilities are, because it was in the city where you have their nuclear facility that they actually, did their limited strike. And I believe Israel now know that if you remove all the air devices that protected Israel, that Iran itself has the capacity or the capability today to reach Israel. So it's a lesson for both sides. But I think for now, they have de-escalated, and that will allow everybody now to focus on the critical issue today in the Middle East, the situation in Gaza.
So, Ambassador Keshi, are you saying that those who are saying we should be afraid of the possibility of a third world war are just, trying to make something out of nothing?
No, they are really not trying to make something out of nothing. But the reality is that both parties, both sides, do realize the consequences of escalating, the current situation, number one. Number two, for example, a couple, if not almost all Israeli allies are not prepared to see the escalation of the war beyond where it is beyond where it is today. Number three, I think also that the Iranians do not really want to go into an outright war with Israel, at least not for now. So everybody is learning some lessons from this. Everybody is being cautious. And I do not think anybody really wants, an escalation, an expansion of the war beyond where it is now. It will not argue well, neither for Israel nor for Iran. And I think both are being strategic and rational.
Well, the same United States, Antony Blinken, asking Israel to calm down. We have also seen some kind of contradiction in terms of the response from Israel. This week, the House of Representatives passed additional military aid package for Israel and other countries. And at the same time, the same United States vetoed the bid to grant Palestinian territory membership of the UN and, the status of a state. Now, how do we reconcile this? These countries, UK, US, they don't want Palestine to emerge as a state. They say, and yet on another hand, some of them will say, oh, a two-state solution is the way forward. But the matter went to the United Nations Security Council. They vetoed the resolution. China supported, Russia supported. What are we dealing with in that aspect of the geopolitics?
We are dealing with a contradiction that is so well known in geopolitics. The hypocrisy also, of particularly the Western world today. As you rightly pointed out, since this war started, the United States in particular has been hammering on the need for a two-state solution to the crisis in Gaza. And they said, the president of the United States has said this, so many times, and almost, in fact, including the Secretary of State, the British Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, they've all said this. But when it comes to the critical voting, I think for them, yes, they are in support. There's no doubt about that they are in support of a two-state solution. But they believe that they have not reached that stage where, that declaration has to be made. There are other things that needs to be done before you get to that, situation. But I believe that if they had actually, if the resolution had gone ahead, has been approved in the United Nations, I think it would have sent a very strong message again to Israel. Now look, it is time, as I've always said on your programs, that it is time to make peace. You cannot continue fighting for 70-something years and think that you are going to fight for another 70. No, it's impossible. Somewhere along the line, something will give in. And I think Israel needs to realize that they've gotten to that stage. They don't even need the outside world to urge them to make peace. For the sake of the future generation of Israelis, today's leaders in Israel should find a way to begin to make peace. It's for their own good, and it's for the good of the people of Israel, as well as the good of the people of Palestine. We need peace. That region has caused us so much headache in our lifetime, believe it or not. You can go back and begin to look at all what has happened, both in the Middle East and the Arab world, and how it changed the world. You remember, even before COVID, the strike on the Twin Towers in New York. You saw how it changed the world. For example, the security that was mounted all over the world, airports, and the change of, visa applications and so on. The refugees that came out of it as a result of America retaliating in Iraq, Syria, and the Syrian war, and so many other things. The situation in that part of the world has really changed the world and made the world a little bit unsafe. It's time we find a way, everybody finds a way to make peace and ensure that that region secures itself and that the region is at peace with itself.
Well, Ambassador, you made the point earlier on that the world is ignoring the major crisis in the Middle East, which is the humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Now, everybody, the Americans, the British, other allies, they've appealed to Israel. But Prime Minister Netanyahu doesn't appear to be listening. The people like Gantz and other hawks within the Israeli system, they don't seem to be listening. Now, yet we run a system and a rules-based international order. So is Israel ungovernable under an international rules-based system?
No, I don't think so. But the reality of our situation is that we have allowed Israel to, to go this way for such a long time, and that they've become so intransigent, not listening to anybody, particularly under this current prime minister. Look, the previous prime ministers, did make some effort to reach out to make peace. And in fact, this same prime minister initially started, hoping that he could make peace. There are statements of his commitment to the two-state solution, but this whole ambition of becoming the longest-serving prime minister, the man who saved Israel, the man who built Israel, all those characteristics of Louis XIV, I'm the state and the state it's me. It's what you are saying in the person of Netanyahu. And as a result, he's become so intransigent, so strong-headed that it's almost very, very difficult for the world to speak to him. But at least they got to him. Look, they've got to him twice now. The last, some concessions he's made to allow some humanitarian agencies to get into Gaza. They were a result as consistent pressure by the international community. Again, the whole idea of being rational and strategic and not to escalate the war, in retaliation, was also an indication that if the global community continues to mount pressure on Israel, that somewhere along the line they might be successful. But I've always made this point on your show and everywhere that, look, no group of people or peoples have fought for a just cause and lost eventually. They might suffer, they might get killed as the people of Gaza are being killed today. But the truth of the matter is that it might not be in a lifetime, but there will be a Palestinian state one day in this world. That is obvious. It will come. It's inevitable. The Israelis cannot continue to hold that reality down, but for a while they will. But the state of a Palestinian state will be baited one day in this world.
Well, Ambassador, let's come home to West Africa. Next door, in Togo. Foya Singbe, president of Togo, has managed to change the constitution, the system of government, from a presidential system to a parliamentary system, under which he will now be a president, and he will have prime minister, and he can remain in power till 2031, and thereafter he can become the president of the Council of Ministers and remain in power for as long as he wants. The people have objected. They say, don't touch my constitution. That's what the opposition groups are saying. He says he's consulting. Meanwhile, Parliament has passed that amendment. His family has been ruling Togo since 1967. He himself has been there since 2005 or so, when his father died. So what is the problem with these African leaders?
I think, Ruben, you have to understand one or two things about Togo and the current president. His father ruled for 35 or 37 years. And so the man grew up with only one knowledge of how his father ruled. And as president himself, he can't understand why he should leave office after about how many years? While his father was there for almost 3 decades. The only difference was that his father did it in a rather, rough way. I served in Togo in the 70s, so and that was during the time of of his father, who, by the way, was also a friend to Nigeria and very helpful to the mission in Togo at that time. So this is the only thing the president knew, that his father was in power for so many years. And he too wants to be, if not meet his father's record, at least go over his father's record. So you can understand his mindset. Number two, we need to begin to ask ourselves the question, what is wrong with parliamentarians in Africa? What is wrong with the core of parliamentarians that actually voted for this new constitution that will extend the president's tenure? It's not only the president that is involved in this thing. When people you expect should advise the president, particularly elders in the party, should try to pin the president down and advise him, but they also, are the leaders in advocating for tenure elongation. You can begin to appreciate the problem. And I have said many times, this crisis is going to escalate. And if there is a coup tomorrow in Togo, will anybody be surprised? No. Because again, this is the simple fact that the young man, no, he's no longer a young man now at least, the president of Togo is not prepared to leave office. He's prepared to match the long regime of his late father, who was a dictator. The only thing that is different between him and the father is that he is trying to at least do his own extension through constitutional means. But I think ECOWAS should also step in. I think ECOWAS should step in and send a very strong signal to leaders around the region who are trying as much as they can to extend their tenure. Look, they can make a tenure for 10, 15 years, as long as they keep to it. But don't be changing the constitution once it's time for you to leave office. I think ECOWAS should make that very clear that it's unacceptable and find a way to stop it.
Well, on that
I'm not
note,
saying they will, but they should find a way to,
On that note, I would like to thank you very much, Ambassador Joe Keshi, for joining us on This Day Live, this Sunday talk show.